Hey, this is Coach Boydstun. In this screencast, we're going to be talking about plant transport. So how do plants transport nutrients, say from the roots up to where they're needed in the leaves, or even from the leaves to the other parts of the tree? How do they get transported? Well, to understand this, you got to understand there's two main types of plants. We have vascular and we have non-vascular. And if you're looking here, obviously the vascular plant, like this tree here, grows much larger than this non-vascular plant. And it's because it has these tissues for transporting nutrients. So a vascular plant is going to have tissue for transporting nutrients, whereas a non-vascular plant is not. So this large tree here can grow large because it has the means to transport, whereas this, like this moss here, is going to stay really low to the ground because it doesn't have the means to transport those nutrients. And so I like to relate this to us as humans. You know, for us to transport nutrients, we need veins and arteries. There's one thing, though, that we have that plants don't have. And if you look over here, it's this right here. It's a pump, all right, in the form of a heart. Trees do not have hearts, and it's real amazing. If you think back to that tree we just saw that can tower hundreds of feet high, how it can get nutrients where it needs to, even from the ground all the way up to the leaves at the top with no pump. So a real amazing feat. And so we have the ability to do that. So how do plants transport those nutrients? And so the first thing I want to do is it's a real simple experiment. You probably did it in elementary school. I want to use it again, though, just to reinforce this idea of how nutrients can move. And so what I have here is just a cup that I put some food coloring in. It's not Kool-Aid, sorry. It's just food coloring, red food coloring, and some water. I also just took a celery stalk here. Obviously, I got one with some leaves because I want to see, can this red water, is it going to move up through my celery stalk and then into the leaves? And so we want to see that. So we're just going to drop that in there. All right, nice and neat. And so there we go. Now this takes about a day to do. It can take anywhere from 12 hours or so. We're going to give it 24 hours to let it sit here and let it do its thing. But we're expecting, obviously, that this red water is going to move up into the tips of the leaves. And we'll check and just make sure that happened. And so, but before I go put that underneath the sun lamp for the night to do that, I want to review one thing that we talked about first semester in one of our screencasts on photosynthesis, and it's this idea of transpiration and how water actually is evaporated off of the leaves and so how it moves. And so we know that water is going to move from the roots up the plant to the leaves, and then we know it exits the leaves through this process of transpiration. And if you remember, on the underside of the leaf, you look down here to the right, I have a couple pictures of what we call stomata. These are the pores on the underside of the leaf. And if you remember, these pores can open and close. And when they're open, they allow for oxygen and carbon dioxide to be transferred, but they also allow for water to evaporate off of the tree. And so there's a couple theories about how water can move from the roots, from the bottom, up into the leaves. Kind of like our little demo that we're going to look at here tomorrow. But as the water starts in the roots and it moves up to the leaves to evaporate, there's really a couple theories that scientists talk about. One of them is actually called a pull theory, and they actually talk about how transpiration, because water has the ability to cohese to itself because it's polar. We've probably all done that penny test where you put as many drops as you can on a penny and see how many you can put on there without the water falling off. And it's just amazing how many you can do that. So water has a really good ability, because it's polar, to stick to itself. And so in this pull theory, the idea is that in transpiration, as one water molecule evaporates off, it pulls the other one with it. And then obviously all the other ones pull with it. So it's pulling that water up the plant. And so that's one idea. Another idea is this idea of what we call push theory, meaning as water diffuses into the roots out of the ground, it creates a positive pressure that then pushes all of the molecules of water above it up. So again, what's amazing is that plants are doing this and moving this water and nutrients up from the roots all the way up to the top of the leaves with zero pump, no heart like us. So a little review on that, but just real interesting stuff. I absolutely think that it's probably a combination of both. It's a little bit of transpiration with a little bit of pressure buildup, but I don't think we truly know. And so right now, I'm going to go ahead and step away, but don't leave me just yet, because I'm going to do a little bit of video trick, and I'll see you guys tomorrow. But I'm just going to step away, and I'm going to step right back on, do a little time travel here. We're going to check out our little experiment and then finish out the rest of the screencast. So just 1 second. Be right back. right, I'm back. All right, so I hope you had a good evening. Hope you got to get a good rest, good sleep. You can see here it did turn red, so it did exactly what we thought it would do. So the water moved up through there. I just got done taking some photos though, because I knew it'd be hard to see with the camera. So let me bring those up. So if you look here, you can see water has moved up through that celery stalk, all the way to the tips, and so it's come all the way up and through, and which is what we expected. So how did the water move up through there? Well, if you look here, this is a picture of the bottom of the celery stalk that was in the bottom of the water. And you'll notice most of this is ground tissue, but you'll see these little dots that are right here. These little dots are called bundles, and they're vascular tissue bundles. So vascular plants, the ones that can grow tall that have these tissues, they have these little vascular bundles, and they consist of two types of tissues that we need to know today. One is xylem, and one is phloem. Xylem is responsible for transporting water from the roots up to the leaves where it's needed, whereas phloem is responsible for taking the nutrients and food produced during photosynthesis and taking that back down to the roots or up to flowers or wherever that is needed. And so those bundles there are the vascular tissues that are moving these nutrients for us inside these plants. And so to take a closer look at that, you can see here in this little diagram, a little more of an animated diagram, this right here looks really similar. If we split this in half, that's kind of like our celery stalk there. So you got your ground tissue there in the yellow, and then you have these little bundles. And so over here you see one of those bundles. And so here's our xylem, which is these pores here. We've got several of them. All right, and then here is our phloem, all right, which is this little bundle right here. So remember, xylem's going to move the water from the ground up. Phloem is transporting the food produced from photosynthesis, because plants are autotrophic. They're making their own food. It's going to transport it either down or up to where it's needed. One last diagram I can show you here, just so you can see it in a slightly different way. What you have here is obviously you have root cells down here at the bottom, and then we have in this diagram leaf cells here at the top, which would represent the top of the plant. We have our xylem and we have our phloem. All right, so water is going to come from the roots up through the plant, moving up to where it's needed. So water is going to move up through those. And these xylem cells traditionally are dead. When they mature, they're dead cells, but they move that water upward. And then phloem take the food produced during photosynthesis, and then they transport that food to where it's needed in the plant. They can transport it up or down. Sometimes, we have a flower that needs energy to grow and form into a flower, and so it will take those nutrients there. But phloem are going to transport the food. Xylem is going to transport the water, and that's really the number one thing you got to remember. And so that was just transport in plants. And so how do they move things? And it's really amazing. You have those two tissues that are able to move water and food to where it's needed, and they have zero pump to make that happen. So I'm Coach Boydstun. Hope that was helpful. That was plant transport. You guys have a good day.